Hi, I'm Allen Stevenson III, and welcome to Rethink Reality, the podcast where we explore how creativity, technology, and consciousness are reshaping what's possible. Today's episode is special, not just because of the mind-expanding ideas that we are about to explore, but because of who I'm exploring these ideas with. Parth Patil, someone I've known since high school. We literally ran cross-country and track together. Fast forward to today, Parth has become one of the most brilliant minds in the space, working at the forefront of machine intelligence, ambient systems, and he's done some incredible work. In this episode, we dive into four main things: what it means to manage a fleet of AI agents like a digital Voltron, how coding has turned into spellcasting, and how Parth uses AI not just to build tools, but to evolve versions of himself. We talk a little bit about work-life balance, identity, and how AI is really reshaping what effort even means to us. So if you've ever felt overwhelmed by AI, or you're super excited by its potential, I think this conversation will hit. With that, let's rethink reality together. Welcome to the Rethink Reality podcast. This is our guest, Parth Patil.
What's up, Don? It's good to be here.
Do you think generative AI is accelerating us towards a world where work becomes more about identity than income?
Identity versus income? I think so. Well, I don't know. Okay, I won't say income is not a component. I think that you have to spend money on compute to get a result, and having more money to spend on compute is a piece of this, right? Like if you can generate thousands of videos, you have more options even as a creative person, but that's not cheap, right? So the more you want, the more intelligence you want to run, the more money you kind of need to run that intelligence. Have something.
But see, you learn stuff so quickly. So what's motivating you right now?
I talked to ChatGPT about this, right? What do you think what's my one greatest fear? And obviously it's kind of attempting to predict based on all our conversations. I think it thinks that I'm afraid that there's not enough time for me to do all the things that I want to do, be the person that I want to be. And I agree with that assessment, actually. I think every day I'm kind of I wake up and I'm there's just not enough. At the end of the day, I go to sleep pretty late almost every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I go to sleep because I'm tired, not because I'm done working.
Mm.
And all that work isn't even it's work that I've chosen, right? It's my exploration isn't complete. And so I go to sleep because I'm physically my body is okay, you're going to start, you're just going to fall asleep if you keep working on this. And so I wouldn't say it's a very balanced way of doing this. It's a very obsessive kind of pursuit of answers. But but we have these machines that can help us do things that we could only dream of just 3-4 years ago. And so then you change, it's you're the scope of things that you want to do. I think what happens is once you have more capabilities, for some people, the scope of things you want to accomplish goes up, and then the number of things you want to learn goes up. And you can't learn everything, but there is enough time to get good at a couple things. And there's enough time on Earth, right? How many days you have in the year and how many hours in the day, and depending on how many days in the week you choose to work. But when you're doing it for fun, I think it's not hard to work every day. That's the other thing is if it's if it's tied to your intrinsic motivation, there's unlimited energy that you can kind of tap into. But then eventually you do actually have to go to sleep and you have to eat food and all that stuff comes into play. Yeah, that feels the limit feels like the biological limit of how much energy you have.
What's so wild about that is how you mentioned just 4 years ago, the idea of being able to chat with a robot brain about this just seemed purely science fiction. And so do you think you could have predicted what is happening now 4 years ago?
When ChatGPT came out in November of 2022, I was working at Clubhouse, and it was the most popular topic in every single conversation. Every single room, every single country, every language, people were talking about this. And we were kind of just indie hacking, just users. We would just hack chatbots into the room. We would just put it would be oh, ChatGPT is now in the room with us, and people would talk to it. And a lot of people, for them, that was their first time experiencing this general intelligence. And I remember because we would have rooms where ChatGPT would roast your bio. It would you join the room and then we would have ChatGPT roast you. And a lot of people were mind blown at this. And I was watching and I was oh my God, this feels already better than C3PO. And I'm you C3PO knows all these alien languages and talks. But really I'm this is it felt to me like this technology is 100 years early.
Right?
I thought that our grandkids would be dealing with it, and then eventually
Yes.
because we have Siri and Google Assistant and they're good,
Yeah.
but they just barely can control my AC and the music. And then I see this thing and it's we can have a conversation, a back and forth. It's a volley of ideas. It's you're playing tennis, but you're bouncing ideas instead of a tennis ball.
It's a real conversation now.
Yeah. And there's like a lot of imperfection, but it's clear that like farmers in my home state of India that I saw met on Clubhouse, they were talking about ChatGPT. I was like, how are you using it? And they're using it to plan their crop cycles. And I
For
was like,
real.
yeah,
Wait, this is bring us back. Which version of chat was this for the
this was
context?
this is ChatGPT like on like in between November of 22 and March 14th of 2023. That's when, so March 14th, 2023, GPT-4 came out, which was a huge leap.
Yes.
Even this was, this was GPT 3.5 turbo, or GPT 3.5 era. Like a very earlier, like, I mean, this wasn't even like, this was probably the first coherent model, and this is the one that caused this magic moment of the explosion of ChatGPT.
Right. And so
And
they were
watching,
planting crops. You said
yeah,
talk to me about that. What do you mean?
like I think about, okay, so like there's farmers in my home state of India, and they're asking, and it's like you ask, it's like, what would you ask the AI, right? So like people here like, oh, write my email. I don't like how you wrote my email. But then you ask someone that's not in tech, or not in like tech, like just like someone that doesn't use technology like on a day-to-day basis in the way that we would, and
Mm-hmm.
like they don't live in an inbox, they don't even have an inbox, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you ask them how they would you put this in front of them, and like a week later, how are they using it? They're using it for the general knowledge, like that this thing has studied so much of human knowledge that it becomes a useful partner for like thinking about crop cycle planning. And I'm a data scientist in a past life, a data analyst. So I'm thinking like they'll never have a data analyst on their team, right? Like if you,
Mm-hmm.
it's like you and like your kids are running a farm, like you're not going to hire an engineer. No engineer wants to work on a farm, as far as like except at like maybe a country level, right? Like I don't know,
Sure.
like that kind of thing. It's just you don't fathom that, right? It's like
Right.
mom and pop shop, like restaurant owners don't hire engineers, but then we white label technology to them so that they can leverage engineering skills. Now you have like a chatbot that knows almost like can get a B- on almost every single topic in the like, and then you put it in front of them, and then they're just like they're able to reason with this thing in a way that is uniquely important to them, and I would
Mm-hmm.
say arguably like a bigger amplification than writing your emails. The further you go from like techies, the more
Yeah.
interesting and like the greater the amplification of like your process is, I think.
Why do you think that's why do you think that's significant that, the further you get away from techies and these AI tools get into the hands of non-techies, what's the impact of that?
I mean, I think of it as the abundance of intelligence. And I'm still forming my thoughts around this, but I would say, like, for example, there's a lot of problems on the planet that we do not solve. And I think about why do these problems remain unsolved? Is it because people don't want to solve them? Is it because and it's like, why do if is it a problem of incentives, right? So how many of our best engineers go and work at one of three companies selling ads?
Wow.
Right? And that's like a lot of people I know, the best
Damn.
engineers I know. I can't convince them to work on something like that's like outside of that. You're not going to make $500,000 working on a farm in India.
Right.
Right?
Damn. That's such a good insight.
Yeah, but now we have language models, and very soon
Okay.
they'll be operating at a level higher than all engineers we've ever met up until this point.
So now they can have that engineer, but it's a
Yeah,
synthetic engineer.
yeah. It doesn't
And
have career aspirations. It doesn't have
wow.
this like. It's not like, so now the labor market has this extra source of cognition that is not tied to like the human kind of career arc that we're kind of like bound by
Wait,
in the old world.
that changes everything then, because if the bottleneck was before, the best engineer is not going to work on the farm in some other place because it just doesn't pay the bills.
Yeah,
Now that will not be a bottleneck moving
yeah,
forward.
yes.
So you call this the abundance.
The abundance of intelligence, right? And I think it's the same thing. It applies to all of us, actually. Like I work with a bunch of like video creators and influencers, and then I see them using AI, and they're solopreneurs, right? And so
Hmm.
like I don't imagine a world where each of them will have like a super smart engineer, human engineer on their team. But a lot of them use tools like Replit, and then they use that to build their website. And they're not doing this like template based approach anymore. Now they have custom software,
See, that's insane.
right?
What is Replit for those that aren't familiar with
Right.
vibe coding? It
I
might
have a
be
tendency to
helpful.
do this. I have a
No
tendency.
worries. No,
Yeah,
I'm
make sure you
happy to
like,
hear it.
yeah, make sure you like tell me to like clarify things, because some. Okay, so
Yeah.
I don't
What
want
is
it to feel
Replit?
like Replit. Okay, yeah. So Replit is it's a browser based coding copilot. So it's basically an AI engineer. So it's like an AI that's does engineering work for you, and like it builds you apps. So you just talk to it in English, or whatever language you speak, you talk to it, you type to it, you say, I want to make an app that does XYZ. Like I want to make a little quiz for my audience. You can make custom software. You describe what you want, and then it just goes and builds that thing, and it builds the first version, and you can play with it, and then you'd be like, actually redesign it in this way. And
Is
so you can
there?
be, yeah.
Oh, sorry, interrupt. I was just gonna. You've been doing. I'm remembering. Did you actually coin the term vibe coding?
No,
Oh,
no.
okay. That's what I had in my
Yeah,
notes.
Andre Karpathy coined vibe coding, but as a thing, it's something that that's like the term that took fire, but it's been a thing since ChatGPT 3.5. Like when ChatGPT came out, the original vibe coders, what we were doing was basically like you tell ChatGPT to make the thing, but ChatGPT can generate code, and then we would copy paste that into our programming environments, and we'd see what happens. And then when it breaks or like sends an error, we copy paste the error back. We're like, hey, ChatGPT, look at the error, and then it would be like, oh, my bad. Like, let's fix this. And so you have this like loop of you give the ChatGPT an idea, it goes and tries to make the first version of that. You show ChatGPT what happened, and then it tries to iterate on that. And now the technology has combined both of those. So now you have coding environments like Replit, like
Yeah.
Cursor, where the language model is inside the environment. So when I ask for something, it makes it, it also runs it, and then when it breaks, it immediately looks at the errors and it suggests the next step. And if you're setting it to like YOLO mode, it'll just keep going, and it'll do all of these things that we were previously copy pasting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I didn't know. Actually, I've never heard the term YOLO mode in this context, so that's freaking
Yeah.
awesome.
It's cool because it's like an actual it's when you tell the AI to work on the thing, and instead of it asking for approval for every single like kind of important decision, you're just like YOLO. I mean, it might accidentally delete your stuff, so you
Right.
kind of you want to set up a sandbox, and you want to set up version
Smart.
control, so you can just be like, oh, you accidentally deleted it, I'm going to revert everything.
Wow, but it's YOLO mode, so it's like that's the risk you take on if you're going to use that mode.
Yeah, and then I when I was first using, like, I was building tools like this back in 2023. Like in the beginning of 2023, I was building
The
programs.
before times.
This was before. Yeah, this is before. I was writing programs that would write other programs, and that could like read and write files on my computer. And then my friends would be like, "Oh man, what about Sandbox? Like, don't you think you should sandbox this?" And I'm like, "What's a gaming computer? And I've already backed all my files up. Like, I think that's the sandbox as far as I'm concerned." Right? So, because you let this thing run wild on the operating system level, you get a huge advantage to like, now you can tell it to just reorganize all your files. You can tell it, but you can also, it may make a mistake and like break some stuff. You can, but that YOLO mode, the idea that like the AI is about to make a decision, and then it asks you for your permission, and then you're kind of like, well, I'm going to go for a walk. Actually, I trust you to do this level of decision. I trust that you do it autonomously. Now
Right.
we're getting environments that are better integrated with the AI, where it's not as risky to allow it to go in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
One of my best friends works at OpenAI, and I asked him, I was like, is YOLO mode, like, because before YOLO mode was coined, I was like, should I be allowing the system to auto approve? Because at what level of work? Because obviously there's a speed advantage to just saying like, yeah, go ahead, and then there's the downside of what if it breaks everything. And then
Sure.
he was like, if you're not working on infrastructure or security, you should be in this high speed mode.
Oh, nice. Oh,
Right?
I see. Wait, explain that. What do you mean?
So if you're working on like backend and infrastructure work, or like the like things related to the security of the program,
Yes.
where like you don't want to make a mistake that you can't reverse. Now, if you're working on user interface, things that like are, stylistic choices, things that are like subjective but aren't like irreversible decisions, it's better to be at the high speed auto approve kind of mindset of like, let's see what this does. Or try 6 variations of it. We're just going to pick the best one anyways. And what's the worst case scenario if I have a backup? If I can undo the progress, like you just Command Z, right? Like,
Yeah.
So if the AI is not 100% reliable, there are still ways to make it incredibly powerful, right? As long as you apply it in the lane where it's aligned with its current limitations, right? Right.
So this YOLO mode was that your rule of thumb? If the cost of error is extremely low, use
Yeah.
the YOLO mode. But
Yeah.
then if the cost of error is very high, you do not use YOLO mode.
Yeah, if the cost of, if it's possible that it'll make a decision that's going to create a ton of work for you to clean up after, then I hit the brakes and I'm like, no, you're gonna have to ask me for permission for every single command of this kind. Just let me know, and then I will approve or decline it. And then you can kind of see it kind of hits the brakes. It's like, I'm about to do this. I'm
Mhm.
about to modify these files. I'm about to do this command. And then I look at it and I'm like, yes. And actually, you're approved to do that kind of thing from now on within this folder. So you kind of creating a
Wow.
bounds. You're saying like, go fast, but only in this space, only with these tools. And we have more control to do that now. So if you have that kind of control, the sandbox, the kind of like guardrails, then you can go fast, and then you start getting the speed advantage, which is great.
So it's what you're describing, this relationship between overseeing and kind of giving direction to the AI, but then being like, oh, wait, let me check in with me first. I want to oversee this. Do you ever feel like you are a manager to AI systems?
Yeah, increasingly, very much these days, I feel most of the work is actually in this like high level kind of like taking a step back and a lot of review. I think if you use deep research, you use deep research.
Love deep research.
So for people that don't know, deep research is a mode that a lot of these chatbots have where it'll go and do like a very deep. It'll scan the web and try to like read a bunch of different websites and a bunch of different code bases, depending on what your problem is, and it'll try to answer your question after doing a big. So it'll create a
So
huge
good.
report, but it'll create a huge report, and then it
Yeah.
might spend like 15 minutes making that report, and then you read it and you realize it would have taken you maybe a week to do something comparable.
At least if
And
you're fast, man, that would take me a month to do one deep
yeah,
research.
and especially in topics that you're not very well versed in, it's going to take you forever, right? And then it'll just do that, so it can kind of dilate the time needed to do that kind of exploratory work, but you still have to review what it's doing. Like you can't just like the output of the deep research you're kind of still looking at, and if you don't know if you don't know the topic deeply, it's harder to understand if it's like making mistakes, where those mistakes are. So it's a lot of review. And then in the same thing in coding, if I tell the system to write 5,000 lines, like build a project, and then it writes 5,000 lines of code, part of why coding is such a powerful application of this tech is because some parts of coding are easy to validate, right? So does the code run? Did it do what you expected it to do? And you can validate that very quickly. But other times it's like, what does this block of code do? So then you're looking at it, right? If it's a very important piece of logic in the application you're working on, then your human judgment. So this is like, yes, the coding copilots, the researchers, they do a lot of work, but then it makes us like more of these like, let me make sure you're not hallucinating. Let me make sure you understood the objective here. Let me reframe that. So we're on this like manager kind of, and you can have many of these working at the same time, right? So
Yes.
I'll have six Claudes working at the same time, and then I have a Mac Mini running, and that's just always got different, Claudes. Just it's like, this is your project. Your job is to work on my website. This is your project.
Wow.
Your job is to
Brilliant.
work on this brand new like framework, right? And they have their own sandboxes, and they can
Is
work on their
the
own things.
In this metaphor, is the Mac Mini like your department? And
Uh,
then there's a supervisor in that department?
yes, I do that on all devices actually. Like
Wow.
I'll have like a parent level like Claude that's more for just like across all the projects, and then I'll have for each project has its own agents in that code base. So every single code base has its own agents, one or more,
And
and
they, yeah, do
some of
they
them are
work together?
persistent.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is we're at the frontier of this, like the coordination problem across multiple agents.
Right?
Yeah,
This has
and
been a
I was
pain
thinking,
point for me as well. That's why I was just like, do you have any insights on how to manage
yes,
the
yeah,
fleet?
yeah. So I don't know. I've been thinking about this for like 2.5 years now, and the suspicion I had, and it seems like the companies are kind of going in this direction, is, well, how do human programmers, like for example, let's just we'll take programming for example, like how do human programmers, teams of people, collaborate on the same project without undoing progress and breaking each other's work? They use GitHub, and
Okay.
so I don't know if you've used GitHub, but
I
it's
use
basic.
it, but like from a total low understanding. Like
Me too.
I copy stuff from it, I paste stuff, I talk to an AI,
Me
but
too. No,
I
I'm at the
interrupted.
same.
Oh, for real?
I'm the exact same. Like
Okay.
I didn't know how to use GitHub, and then one day I was, and it's like, as a non-engineer, like I felt kind of ashamed because it's like I got to ask my engineering friends, and they'll be like, "Oh, you don't even know how to." Like, they're not going to be
Right.
so judgmental. They're good people, but you could go to AI and be like, "Wait, teach me GitHub," like, and then why it's important, and so you get version control. You can also get it so that like It's like how you work on a feature, I work on a different feature, and then
Yeah.
we both independently work on copies of the code base. And then when we want to combine them, GitHub allows us to like triage the difference and then merge our code back
Whoa.
together.
My
That
God.
was, yeah. This is GitHub's a great like innovation in engineering. Turns out like coding copilots using GitHub solves a large part of this coordination problem.
Wow.
They
Holy
basically,
crap.
yeah, they're working on cloned copies of your code base in parallel. Same thing. I think last time we met at a Masters of Scale Summit, and I was talking about AIs having their own virtual machines working on a bunch of different things in parallel.
Yes.
That is exactly where we are right now.
You called it.
Yeah, and like
Wait,
if you
so
use
where's the
tools like,
code live?
yeah,
I'm confused. Like, if it's in GitHub, is that in their servers, or can you run it locally off of an array of machines that you have? I don't understand where it
Git
is.
type systems, you can do a local there's like local versions of Git. Git is mostly just like a way to track changes across a complex kind of system, and then
Okay.
with many people contributing to it. But in the
Wow.
present, it's like not just the GitHub users include AIs now.
Got it. In the past, it was all human engineers who
Yeah.
would contribute to multiple parts of the same code base, and then Git would merge the similarities and the triage the differences.
Exactly. It helps you figure out, okay, you made that change, I made this change. Now when we integrate them, like we're gonna have some things to patch a little bit to make it merge.
Wow.
And then you get version control, so you can revert to an earlier state, and that's very powerful, right? So if your code base, especially when AI is kind of this somewhat not unreliable, but just not deterministic, and it makes decisions, and then sometimes you want to undo them. GitHub
Right.
is a very natural way to like get you more kind of guardrails around and coordination. Like many AIs using GitHub at the same time is also very interesting, because now you have like each of them is working on a copy of your project.
So it feels like eventually you start to run into a physical limit, because like right now, if there's, cognitively, I don't see any limit. You could just keep adding more and more large language models, more and more servers, give them more space. Do you find this as like the great challenge of what takes us into the next dimension or the next era? Is it just the compute infrastructure?
I think the compute infrastructure is interesting. It's like one piece of it, like how much compute. But I think the bigger constraint is actually the how do we interface with such a system?
Interesting. What do you mean?
Like a company can have, you can have two people, you can have one person, or you can have 500 people. Now you have layers of management, you have hierarchy, you have product teams, right? Like a product manager at Facebook might just be working on one button, but then a product manager at a startup might be running all of the products.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the AIs will follow a similar thing, where like as the complexity of the project increases, you may have more AIs focused on different subcomponents, and then scaling that up. Like what level of hierarchy does it have? And that's necessary because the AI has a context window limit, so it can't actually just memorize everything in a large code base yet.
Yeah, it has to do handoffs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
I have a theory then, hearing you say that. There's going to be a model that's so good. Let's call it GPT 7.
Yeah.
And this thing can not only just super large context windows, but it can code actual new agentic systems. Then that thing, why should it listen to you as a human? Like, can it just do its? I almost see like eventually, if we kept going down this rabbit hole, I don't see why there's a human manager overseeing the fleet. Why can't it be an AI manager that oversees a fleet of AIs, and then it's turtles all the way down?
Even if it is an AI managing the AIs, doesn't the AI report to a human on some level? It reports to human, like there's the person that created it, why giving it its higher level objective.
Well, think about like your parents and kids. Like, a parent might give their kid a high level objective, but eventually they're like, actually, I'm going to do something different.
This is, I think, on some level actually desirable.
Okay. Talk to me about that. Why would it be? I agree. I'm just curious to hear another perspective on it.
Well, it's funny. It's timely, actually. A couple things happened this week, but basically a week ago, a buddy of mine sent me a paper on an older idea, like Darwin-Gödel machines, essentially like programs that can modify parts of themselves and then use that to like evolve.
Yes.
But of course, not like human evolution speed is like very slow.
Incremental.
Right.
Slow speed.
But when you have programs, like you can accelerate like generation, like they don't have like life cycles in the same way that we do. So they can just like run and then like evaluate themselves, mutate themselves, and then run again. And then you just give it a number of generations and a set of problems, and then you allow it to like explore the solution space and search. And also like the mutation is kind of like based on like DNA mutation, but instead it's like modify parts of your code, modify your prompt. So this framework came out like it's an older idea, but like reapplied to language models. That's the interesting lens, right? So you have a program, you have language models that can rewrite programs, and then the program is this larger system built on language models that also has tools, access to your computer, and you give it a sandbox, and then you kind of hope that it evolves into a better version that can solve the problems. That's the Darwin-Gödel approach. So I took this paper and I just took it to ChatGPT 03 Pro, which came out 2 days ago.
No freaking way. Oh my God.
And then I said, okay, given I want to use the OpenAI Agents SDK, here's the paper, integrate these, and then come up with a technical design doc. And then I should be able to give this to a different coding agent and it should be able to do it. And it worked for 20 minutes and it comes up with the technical design doc. I just copy paste that into Claude Code and it one shot the system.
No freaking way. It made it?
Yeah. It made it.
Who made it? Would you actually, how do you describe that? Did you make it?
I have the vision. I mean, it's a couple ideas that a friend of mine sent me. I take those building blocks, I take them to the smartest model I know, O3 Pro, which is kind of like an Oracle system. It's like, it'll think for 25 minutes. It'll think for like over an hour if the problem requires it, I think.
Wow.
And then also it overthinks the easy questions. Like the first question I asked this model was, is 9.1 bigger than 9.9? And it spent 14 minutes thinking.
Wow.
So, and I had to go for a walk. I'm like, okay, don't ask this thing any dumb questions because like it might waste your time. But ask it a question that's like, so I was like, what's the hardest question? I was like, okay, well, here's a framework that I literally just barely read the paper for. And can it implement that? Because I would rather learn by doing, right? Like, let's get this working. And then I'm going to talk to this after I have it. I'm going to talk to it and then learn more by playing, right?
Yes.
And turns out like O3 Pro can think at least that level for like, it did it. O3 Pro came up with the spec. And then Claude Code in my environment could just like, it was like going through the checklist. Claude Code went and executed. So I'm using like multiple models to do this and then building a system that creates more models, like more agents, right? So what you're describing is very timely because I spent the last this morning, I was just like, man, like it's like, what am I going to tell this to do? How many generations I'm curious to see what it'll grow into. And I'm not an ML guy. That's the crazy thing is like all of this is kind of just like, I'm bootstrapping using language models to learn about other systems that can use these systems. It's like you're kind of just like bootstrapping to a higher level, and it's okay. Yeah, and it's okay that you're not an engineer because like the model is very, very smart. So you're kind of just like you're leaning on it for everything that you're weak at, and then it pulls you to a higher level more quickly than any classroom could, right? So
it kind of reminds me of Voltron. Did you ever watch that?
Yeah.
And like each of those limbs are like a different tool.
Yes.
With the different capabilities and functions. But then when you snap them all together, you build this thing that is capable of stuff that was just not possible for any one of those limbs to do.
Exactly. And I think that's what's awesome about this. And I'm not saying it's the future of AI or anything. This is just like me taking the Lego blocks of like, I can language models generate text. That's awesome. Now you give them access to a computer. That's great. Give them to a virtual machine. You give them like web search. Now they're able to do meaningful work with real-time information from the web. Like there's a knowledge cutoff, but how do you bootstrap past that? It's like, now you can search the web. So, and then if the language model knows, I don't know anything after September 2023 because my knowledge cut off, well, just check the web. Now you have like a way to go beyond that. Yeah, it's powerful. It's very surreal that we can just talk to programs and then use them to create other programs. I think that's fascinating. Like, I don't know. Have you ever seen Tron?
Yeah. Oh my God.
I feel like the last couple of years, I felt like Jeff Bridges in Tron. Or like, you talk to a chatbot and it's like, maybe we can do this. And I'm like, I don't know. Can we? And then let's try. And then like 2 hours later, you're like, holy, like we didn't get it all the way, but we went way further than I would have gone in 8 months in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And usually that happens like multiple times a week and I have to go for a walk, right? Where I'm like, oh, what does this mean? Like effort is no
Mm-hmm.
longer like how much time you spent coding. It's effort is like more, did you ask the right questions? Are you
Yeah.
talking, are you even asking the right question is more important than like how many hours did you sit there, you know?
So actually, I would love to kind of dive in more on that. Can you share with me what your current definition of effort is?
I think it's I do subscribe to this idea that like you should just spend more time in, like more time is like obviously the thing that we can control is how much attention we apply to a problem space or a creative pursuit. And the limit of that is like every single day 24/7, right? That's the ultimate form of like physical input effort. But then there's this other thing which is like that's the work hard, but then
Okay.
there's the work smart. And I would
Right.
argue that working smart is way more important than working hard, because if you ask the right questions or if you like meet the right people and then they send you down the right, rabbit holes, that can you can connect dots in ways that purely just sitting in front of the computer and trying to do things by hand will not achieve. And that's important, especially when like if you think about one way to think about when you're making something using AI, how many prompts does it take to get to the end or the first version?
Ooh, wait, what do you mean? How many prompts?
Like you have an idea for a website or you have an idea for an application or a system, and it's not, and then traditionally people like not like my teammates will be like, oh Parth, how long is that going to take? In an old life I would be like, it's probably going to take like 8 hours for like 6 days, like of me sitting there and working. Now I'm like, no, 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 that's like a very strange question. I was like, you can skip a lot of that work if you ask the right questions, if you come up with the right prompt. So it's actually like how far will we go in the first 5 prompts is a better question, right?
Mm.
Because like if I can sit here and ask the right first 5 questions, we may do traditionally a week's worth of.
Oh, so what's your input? Are you using your voice? Are you using motion? Are you using vision? How are you inputting faster
Yeah,
to get your prompts out? Get to that
I
5.
I think voice is key, and people are still cluing into it. But typing your prompts is very slow. Like your fingers, if you think about okay, so these models are very context heavy, right? They want you to provide a ton of context, and you have to think about context is not just like here's who I am. It's not just text. It's you can copy, you can, like if you're building an application, you can screenshot your application or you can screen share it. Now a lot of these models will be able to see your screen, and that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Like this applies to language models too. When it sees your screen, you don't have to describe, like it is like grokking more and more of the problem. Like it can, if it can see what you're working on, that's going to make it more useful as it helps you. If it can see that you're working in Ableton or in like a video editing tool, it can see this high level kind of project view, which would take forever for you to type into this model. So even the text-based piece of the communication, I prefer to press a button and transcribe, because then I can ramble and I can speak for like a minute, and what you say in 1 minute is way more context rich than what you can type in 1 minute. Most people are not fast
Yes.
typers.
I'm
And
super
that,
slow.
yeah,
Super slow typer, always have been, and probably always will be. Because can you still spell? I've like totally lost my ability to spell.
I can spell, but that's because my parents made me do spelling bees as a kid.
Nice. Lucky.
Useless, useless otherwise. I mean, actually, the way that it ends up being useful is that you get exposed to vocabulary, which, if you have a rich vocabulary, you can just go way further with language models.
Wait, hold up. Hold up. That might be like a whole skill set people should focus on right now.
Yeah,
Basically, increase your vocab.
yeah.
Because
I
then you
mean,
can prompt better. You have better
yes,
prompts. Oh my God.
yes.
Now I care about vocabulary. Damn. That
And
makes more sense now.
I think of it also like another way to think about it is like this is like spellcasting. Like how many spells do you have in your arsenal? It's
Right. If
like
you only had like one spell,
analyze,
my
visualize.
God.
Like these are keywords that allow the model. Like, even if you were like you show a language model that can, like if you take O3 from ChatGPT and
Yeah.
you show it you take a picture somewhere in the world and you show it to it and you say the word geoguess.
My God. It knows
That
exactly
one
what that
word.
means.
It knows what one GeoGuessr is, a game that is like identify the location of this image from the image. Now, instead of me saying identify the location of this image, I just say the shortest version of that, which is GeoGuess this. Right? So the model has general knowledge, so you're able to, like, if you know more words, more games, more whatever, like you can trigger these parts of these capabilities of the model more efficiently. And I say efficiently, like what's
Wow.
the shortest way to prompt this model to get it to do what you want to do is one form of efficiency.
Wow.
Like,
Better vocabulary.
yeah,
And I love oh my God, you call it spellcasting.
yeah,
That makes so much sense.
right.
Can you imagine if Harry Potter only was allowed to use one spell?
Yeah. Like Hermione is way more powerful compared to like everyone knows Hermione's more useful. If you had one of the three on your team, you would want Hermione because she's been studying everything and she's just like she has like a solution for everything in off like on the top of her mind and she can say the right words and then like solve the problem. And I
Wow.
feel this is very much where we are with prompt engineering. So people are like, prompt engineering is not going to be a thing. I'm like, no, you're like maybe you're like you have to think about prompt engineering as not just how you talk to the model but how you bring any context into the model. So are you showing your phone, like are you your phone at the problem is another way to prompt engineer, right? A video live feed of your
Yes.
problem, right? You're talking to
Wow.
the AI. So that's visual, and then transcription is faster than typing. So then now it's like if you prefer the like let's solve this problem very quickly, you can talk to the model up front in voice instead of typing every single, because if you think about typing a word
Yeah.
like versus speaking a word, if I say like Wingardium Leviosa, I'm going to be sitting here typing each letter. That's a
Yeah.
lot of effort. And a lot of people have carpal tunnel. Like my mom has carpal tunnel. She has preferred
Mm-hmm.
transcription for like 12 years. She's been using transcription.
I got nerve damage. I'm right there with you.
Exactly.
I always have to use voice to text. Always.
This is actually it is good that we adopted that before it got good.
Yeah.
Because now
Wow.
at the other end of it's not just transcription, but it's transcription into a language model.
Yes.
Not just a language model, but it can generate anything, right? Video, images. It can now.
Apps,
It's the
programs.
beginning of programs, and it's the beginning of being able to automate all actions on your computer. So, like, I can't wait for like 3 years from now you to be able to sit in front of the computer, and you won't have to use the keyboard because it would
Yeah.
just be It would be an option to use the keyboard because only when you need more precision over some of the. I feel like in that world, it's unlikely that keyboard is necessary.
So to support your thesis,
Yeah.
yesterday I put on my Apple Vision Pro and I was in a group chat with my friend and we vibe coded stuff without keyboards that we could work together on an idea. So they were teleported into my space. I was teleported in their space. They
Dude,
look.
I gotta join this because I am convinced that that's like one major use cases of virtual reality is this like multiplayer co-creation.
Yes. It was James, by the way, from high school. James Steininger.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Dude,
The throwback.
James is vibe coding unbelievable things. Unbelievable things. And I don't want him to break any secrets. He should ask him to share if he feels comfortable.
Yeah.
He's vibe coding stuff that people do not think about at all, even within our circles. Even within our circles.
That's what I love. I love it because you got to get to that other planet of like creative. There's so many other planets, by the way. Like I'm pretty sure. I think about like the different spaces of possibilities, and it feels like once you get to one of those spaces, there's just an explosion of possibility that people haven't yet seen because it just hasn't been remixed. Like no one has like gone there yet, and you might be the first person to like explore that dimension of like creativity, and then you come back to where we are, and you're like, oh, I come with fire.
Yes. That metaphor of planets. Can you elaborate more on that? So like would one planet be like AI engineering apps? Another planet could be like music. Is that what you mean by different planets of?
I feel like it's more like I try to make sense of this, like what is general knowledge, and I feel like the language models are the beginning of us being able to, you have all of human knowledge, and you have like music, you have text. I mean, you have audio, text, video. You have every idea. So like every single idea mapped in like high dimensional space by these like these models, and so some ideas are close together, some are further away, and then I think about it as like, what ideas can we access? And ties back to vocabulary. There's your vocabulary, which is like all the words that you know, and they're tied to ideas that you've been exposed to in your life. And then there's the vocabulary of ourselves as a species, right? Which is like huge.
Oh my God.
Many languages. So but it's not just words because they're also putting, videos and images in this same space. So the latent space is multimodal. The space between I think of this as like the space between all ideas. And not just all ideas we've had, but all possible ideas.
The space between all possible ideas is the space that we're working with.
Yes. Yeah. It's sort of like an image model is like one aspect of this is it takes a bunch of noise and then it turns it into like you prompt it and then it's like you're basically telling the image model there's a dragon in here, just show it to me, and then it takes this noise and then it imagines that it like denoises it and then a dragon appears. But then you think, okay, how like like how many possible images are there? There's 3 pixels, and then it's larger than the number of it's larger than a Google. It's larger than the number of atoms in the universe.
And
The
it feels
number
like
of
it will always be, right? There'll always be
yeah,
more images than there are.
yeah. But
Wow.
most of those images are not even accessible through us because we as species have not encountered these ideas yet and given them a name. So like
Oh,
the human vocabulary, like the humanity as a species vocabulary is a limit, but then there's a bunch of ideas of things that we have not yet named.
got it. And that's another. I like this shape. So would you almost say it's like a galaxy and then another
Yeah,
galaxy within a
yeah,
galaxy, and then
yeah.
each one is very, very difficult to access without some big shift in civilization?
Yeah, there's like it's like ideas, right? So like there's you asking for something that's already been done. That's fairly easy because we have a clear vocabulary to access that. But then for asking
Right.
for something in this like in the space beyond, like that's somewhat familiar, but like beyond is now possible. And it's like
Hmm.
there's a lot of messy stuff that doesn't make sense to us anyways because we are the human experience. But there is interesting stuff that has not yet been done that is outside of what we even can have words for. That is very interesting to me. And the video models you played with VO3,
Of course.
they give me the same feeling again. Of
Oh,
you can ask this thing to render like anything, like anything. It's a simulation, right? It can render 8 seconds of anything.
yes.
And I see people like rendering YouTubers and like street interviews, and that's funny because it goes viral on social. But then
Right.
I'm like, man, you could ask for any universe, and you ask for the one that we live in, right? Like,
Oh, you're right. It's like we could be doing anything, and it's almost like why. That's like okay. This is a weird reference. Did you ever watch SpongeBob SquarePants?
yeah, I love
Do you remember?
SpongeBob.
You do? Okay.
Yeah,
Do you remember when Patrick and SpongeBob had the same, were in Patrick's dream,
yeah,
and SpongeBob
yeah,
was like, "What's
yeah.
your dream like?" And Patrick's ability to think of what he could imagine was just him riding like a pony on like
Yeah,
a pony machine in
yeah,
a
yeah.
completely white, infinite void of nothingness. And SpongeBob was just like, "Dude, you could dream about anything." And he's like, "Well, basically, like all I know is this."
He's a very simple guy, and you see that in his representation of his imagination. Yeah, yeah. But
Wow.
it's like a canvas. I think it's actually more like a canvas,
Okay.
and you reach more of it by having an interesting life and like meeting people that change your perspective, and then eventually you have like you want to see more of this like infinite space of ideas. People look for it in different ways, like meditation, psychedelics, video games. All
Oh,
of that is just like yeah,
did we
yeah.
already talk about this? Did you already play Age of Empires?
That was the first. Oh come on, like Age of Empire, the new one. I haven't played the new one,
No,
but
there's a new one.
I think there's yeah they're remastering it, and it also I think there's one on mobile. But I played Age of Empires 2 growing up. That was like the first real time. I played that when I was like 6 years old, 7 I think.
Oh my god. Okay, you're blowing my mind. I don't think we've talked about this. I've been Do you know Prostegma?
Is this one of the lines that the builders say? Who says that?
Yes, that's exactly it.
Is
Yes.
that what yeah,
Yes.
the
It's
the
the
villagers say?
villagers.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know. Also, wololo, wololo.
Oh my god, I forgot about that one.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
for folks hearing this out of context, there's a game, and when you command the characters around, you kind of have this bird's eye view, and you have to manage a civilization. When you ask the characters to do something, they made up a language that's kind of an amalgamation of all the languages. So it's like a new language just for the video game. And so the villagers, when you have to have them go and like farm or like collect resources, you select them, you click where they need to go, and then they make a sound that sounds like stigma. And the only people that know this reference are people that have deeply played this game.
yeah.
And also it just anywho, that's the context.
Yeah, I mean, we can bring that back to where we are now. I think that those games were an early signal of how to manage multi-agent systems, and I
I was
think
just
that
thinking that this week
like,
too.
I think that like for us to get to a place to manage hundreds of agents at the same time, it's probably, in my opinion, it's gonna. I suspect it may look more like a game that can render many units on the screen that are managing different processes. It's like instead of chopping a tree, you're working on my personal website, you're working on my finances. Like that's the mental model. I'm a gamer. Like this is
Yeah.
if I've seen, it's like where have I seen where I can control 200 units and then they all do
God.
different things and they all have different specialties. Games
Yes.
like games like Age of Empires, games like RimWorld. These are my inspiration for multi-agent systems for
You're
sure.
giving me chills. You're giving me actual chills hearing this.
And the cool thing is you
Wow.
can go to a language one and be like, let's make
Yeah.
an
Let's
Age of
vibe it.
Empires. Yeah, let's like we have this evolutionary, agent building system. Now build a UI that looks more like Age of Empires, and it will try. Like the space
Yes.
between the ideas, right? So maybe no human has done it yet, but you could be the first to ask the AI to do it, right? Like
I might have to do this probably like after our podcast here.
yeah, and we're gonna end up doing the same thing in VR. Like I
Yeah.
think like that's how we fill VR with more meaningful, interesting experiences. Like I think there was like Gen AI allows us to fill it with the applications that it was previously missing, I think.
Right. And also
And
the
also,
customization, the
yeah,
personalization, that was also missing from spatial and virtual. Now that we're solving that on these 2D screens, they're almost like the natural next progression.
yeah. This is one of my favorite reasons. I mean, obviously, I don't use VR like regularly, but I can tell you like a clear limitation of 3D. The physical world is screen real estate. Like, like you have your laptop, and that's like a certain amount of space. How many chatbots can you actually look at in one screen without having to switch tabs and switch like? And then you have a second computer. You have like my desktop at home is a 49-inch monitor, and that allows me to see more, right? And same thing. Like when you're playing the game and you get a more macro view, you can see more units at the same time. So if you think about agents as units working on your projects for you, then one of the limitations is how many screens you have. But
Yes.
then you go into VR and you have unlimited screen real estate.
Yeah, it's anywhere.
So that feels like it makes sense. And you get the spatial benefit of like hand gestures and stuff. I think what's missing on the Vision Pro is the like you want a language model at the operating system level.
Yeah.
And that's when it becomes more like Jarvis.
So
But
I found a
yeah,
kind of hack for that.
what are you doing? Like,
So what I've done, I can't believe it's so cool. Like we're in different circles at times, and yet we're working on similar things, and it just continues to blow my mind.
yeah. We should
It
be
makes
trading these. We should be trading some of this alpha more often. Honestly, I feel like your spatial reasoning and your spatial like skill set merged with maybe like my automation skill set can create some pretty interesting like intersections.
I bet we
Yeah,
could do some actual sorcery, not even
yeah,
figurative, actual sorcery.
exactly.
Because we just
Actual
talked about
sorcery.
spellcasting, we talked about the magic. That's actual sorcery.
Like we're gonna have games. I think like you'll be able to just voice command. Like you'll have your troops, I'll have my troops, and we'll be voice command in like
Yes.
virtual space. And like I can't wait for that kind of stuff. I think
God.
unit economics don't work out at scale yet, but they will exist. All of this, once it gets cheaper and better, it will exist.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you imagine a lot of it early on, and I see that, and I'm just like, less than 10 years, easy. Because you're like painting a picture of what's possible, because you're kind of a sci-fi guy, right? And
I love
mean, I
sci-fi.
consider my, but you're like a sci-fi like you are creating the next sci-fi, right? Like you imagine in a world like we may have this capability. What does that look like 3 years out? And then I look at that and I'm like, yeah, actually, he's not wrong. XYZ pieces assembled at higher speed and higher reliability will give us that reality.
Wow, dude, that's so crazy. Then the responsibility is so paramount, because like if that can happen, then we have to be very careful how we wield the sorcery and this powers.
Yes, exactly. I mean, in think about it, right? There are 3 unforgivable curses in the Harry Potter universe.
What are they?
I mean, there's the Cruciatus curse to like torture someone. There's Avada Kedavra, which kills a person, and then there's Imperio, which mind controls them.
Okay.
So you can basically like extrapolate back to language models. Like there are things you probably shouldn't prompt these systems to do.
Like certain spells should be dark.
Yeah, I equate it to that. I'm like, and so when someone asks me, "Oh, can that be done?" I'm like, "Yeah, but you're asking for dark magic. Like, let's not go down that route until we explore all the upside first. That's like this low hanging fruit, like very obvious, like human amplification. Don't need to go down that. We don't need to go down that route. Like, ask someone else. Don't ask me. I'm not the, like maybe I'm the defense against the dark arts teacher. Like,
oh my god, I love this metaphor. Also,
it's a cool metaphor. It helps people make sense of like the like prompt engineering applied to. It's going to be more relevant, I think, as these models can take actions. Because right now, a lot of people perceive it as like it just talks to you,
right?
But it's different when it does things.
So I saw a prototype that's public information from a patent Apple filed for a version of AirPods, an AirPods Pro that would come out, has an infrared camera on the outside. And I was thinking about it, what could you use that for? And I had the idea of gestures. So imagine you actually do a spell cast, and like when I do this, that's send that thing to Claude to that fleet. But when I do this gesture in the air, that does a whole deep research on the thing that just happened 5 seconds ago, but ignores everything that's happened throughout the day.
Yeah.
And these become as gentle as gestures in the air, as if I'm using a magical wand, and it sees the cues. I've trained it on what my magical spells are,
This
and
feels very much like what Tony Stark has, where he can kind of go to any UI, wave his hands, and then the UI responds to it. I think
yes,
that combined with MediaPipe, which I've like randomly played with, just like a library.
I don't know what MediaPipe is. I never heard of that.
I'm very like I asked AI for something and it once used MediaPipe and then it made this interface where I could wave my hands and control things on the screen. And I was kind of just like, I feel like Tony Stark, because it's like if I don't have to move the mouse, I would kind of just be like boom, 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 like.
Right.
But that combined with natural language, right? Like pull up the report on X, and then you're like, see another one. The gestures, I like that. I think it feels more natural than. And I'm a PC gamer. I like mouse keyboard, but I feel like we may be on the. I'm hoping we're at the end of mouse keyboard, and then we can create. And then all interfaces maybe like once you're standing in front of them become responsive in this new way. That approach, like the AirPod thing, that's fascinating. See, I like that you're thinking about this before it's like anyone else thinks about it, because it is possible that once that technology comes out, we could just that day validate if you were even like on the right, like it's not like it doesn't take like 8 months to figure out if you were on the right path.
What do you mean?
Now,
If it doesn't exist yet?
Once the tech comes out, we just copy paste the documentation into O3 Pro, and you're like, hey, can we like write a program that lets me
Holy
do
crap.
this? And it might just be possible on day zero. That's the realization a lot of people need is like,
wow,
anything can be done faster, and the turnaround time is almost like instant. So it's like, are you asking the right question? In this case, the right question is like, how does this hardware work? How does my vision for the interface look like? And then can we get the first version today is the piece that a lot of people miss. They think it takes $1 million and a bunch of people, but it's like, it's the right prompt, right?
Well, what's crazy is when I play with like the latest tech, it gives me ideas of things that I hadn't thought of before. And the other one was like, okay, everything's going to be synthetic and fake soon. So how can people validate things online, digital? And then I'm like, oh my God, Apple has a solution for this. In the Vision Pro, you already tried yours on, right? You have one?
Yeah.
Optic ID. You're the only person that can run. Yes, a retina scan is the only thing that lets you drive a persona, which blows my mind, because like then I can know for a fact that I am talking to Parth's avatar, because I know you can only run that if there's a biometric scan.
Yeah,
that's how you can trust that I'm having a conversation with someone. I'm like, holy crap!
That's actually fascinating.
Thinking about
that's actually fascinating. I didn't think about that until you mentioned it just now. And I'm like, because I think about this all the time. Like we're filling the internet with a bunch of like synthetic information of anything.
Yes.
And I work on avatars too, and I look at these avatars and I'm like, well, this is indistinguishable from, and it doesn't even have to be indistinguishable for it to be deceptively good.
Correct.
Because most people don't know the original person anyways. Like everyone has a parasocial relationship with the subject in many cases, people you follow on the internet. But then when that person is a clone, like how do we know which clone is them?
Right. That's why I was asking, like, who are you is a question I keep having to ask to people that live by their AI clone or only defer their ideas to their AI self. And I'm like, which one? It's almost
as like I work with like these avatars and the cloning tech, and kind of people kind of associate me with like being pretty deep in it. And I think this is the year I try to clone myself. I say try to every time I try to. I mean, the first thing I ever asked ChatGPT to do was teach me how to clone my voice. And it did. It wrote the program. It used an open source library and wrote the program. Then the second thing I asked it was like, wait, teach me how to run this on my computer. I don't know any. And then it teaches me the basic programming setup. Then, and within 2 hours, I had a working voice clone. Then I was like, well, teach me how to build a GPT powered chatbot. And then it did. So in my first day of programming with language models, I had voice cloning, and then I had a GPT running on my computer. So then I connected the two, and I was like, now I have a GPT connected to my computer that sounds like me. But in that act, I realized, man, cloning someone is not easy. And it's like a very strange, it's more like you're creating a sculpture. So like a sculpture isn't the person, right? The person's way more facets to their person. There's so much more depth to a person. It's a snapshot of one part of their physique, but it is not their mind, right? Like in the same way, you can create a snapshot of some part of a person's corpus of ideas,
right?
But you are not creating an actual like. It's a cheap illusion, in my opinion. Like, and I love this tech, but it's just like a cheap illusion.
Yeah.
The real person, the real deal, the real person is much more it's just much richer, and like the richer identity. Like one day I had an anxiety attack. I was like, oh man, like this AI can do my job like way better than me. Data analysis. And this was GPT-4. I was like, GPT-4 writes perfect SQL if it knows the schema of the problem. And I was like, man, I thought data analysis was like me being a top 1% data analyst. This is my moat. This is my career. I'm good. Like if I didn't want to work hard, I could just do this thing, and I'd be fine in society, right? Like society
Right.
would pay me to do this, and then I would have a career. Then I see GPT-4, and I'm like, it's like John Henry, the folktale of John Henry,
I'm not
the
familiar with
steel.
that one.
It's an old folktale of like John Henry was like a steel man, and he was
Oh,
one of the strongest. Yeah,
with the
it was like, yeah,
hammers.
exactly. The hammering.
Okay.
They were building the railroads through the Rocky Mountains, and at the time, it was done by like laborers. Like John Henry was the strongest of the steelmen, one of the most efficient steelmen of all time. I think he was based on people that were real, but maybe not actually real. But then at the same time, the steam engine comes out, and then they basically have a team of people sitting on a train kind of just like laying the tracks out, and as it like breaks through the mountain. And so now you have then what they in the folktale, John Henry goes up against this steam engine in a head-to-head battle. So like a team of guys managing the steam engine while it breaks through a tunnel, and then him doing it manually. And then in the story, he wins the race. Like he breaks through the other side of the
Wow.
before the steam engine, and but then he dies of overexhaustion.
Oh my God.
And that's how I feel doing data analysis manually, when alternatively I can talk to the bot that I built, like talk to the data analysis agent that I built. So I had that
Yes.
anxiety attack. I was like, this feels like a John Henry moment. But then the next day I sat down and I was like, let's build a data analysis agent. Just wanted to do most of what I was doing previously manually, but like programmatically. Then I will speak in English and I'll describe the business problems. Just like the CEO asked me a question and then I go do the
Mm-hmm.
analysis. I'm going to be the CEO. I'm going to ask the question. And then this agent will write the analysis, do the exploration, and then come back to me with the answer. And it only took me like 3 hours to get like natural language to SQL working, basically translating English into business logic programmatically. And I was just like, I got it working, and I was sitting there. I was like, the takeaway is it'd be a crazy oversimplification of who I am to say I'm just a data analyst. Now I am much more, right? Now I'm free to be a super data analyst, but that freedom I can use to, attack other parts of my own, who I want to be, what I want to grow into. I could go deeper in this, but I already have a huge advantage here now and a programmatic advantage. So I might as well explore my creative interests. Like I might as well become more than just a analyst. So I think it's an expansion of self that's made possible through AI. So yeah, yes, there's an anxiety attack. There's the disruption of like who you were, and knowing that that's very likely going to be an evolving role. Even you evolve with the role, and you evolve into something else, and you could choose to go deeper in that thing, or you could choose to go broad into other things. Now that like you have super intelligence working on your behalf on the specialized part.
It feels like you, instead, in that John Henry metaphor, instead of, I guess, subjecting yourself to only being John Henry, you realized you could also just build the steam engine.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, like, why exhaust yourself to the point where you don't get to be you? Build the steam engine. And God,
And it's not
yeah,
like we were getting points for memorizing syntax and like being very good at writing SQL. That was the old world. You had to memorize blocks of code in order to do anything. But now it would be ridiculous for you to memorize blocks of code to do everything, because now the language model is already memorizing blocks of code across every language. Like I am only good at one, maybe two languages. The language model can get like probably a B minus in every language, which means that like worst case I should be using, like I can expand into other languages more quickly, because that augments like my core skill set of Python, SQL. That's great, but now
yeah,
I can go into front end, I can go into web, I can go into all these other
right.
languages just by asking the language model to like bootstrap me there. Hey, take me to that level, you know?
Get you to that superhuman level. Give me the
Exactly.
steps.
Yeah, it's the greatest learning tool. It's like this the greatest learning tool of all time. It is the tool that teaches you how to use all the other tools. This is like meta, like this is the most meta technology we've ever experienced. I love that.
Yeah.
I look at my music production, I look at the screen and I'm like, there's all these buttons I don't know. What is this concept? Then I just share my screen with the AI and I'm like, teach me about sidechain compression and how it works in house music. And then I'm having a conversation and it's like, oh yeah, this is what this knob does. This is what this knob does. And that is powerful, right? Like this is like this is the learning. This is a crazy learning amplification for anything, you know.
When you think of your future self, do you imagine Parth 2.0 as a human or as a distributed constellation of agents?
I think of it as like a system, like a distributed constellation of agents, but not just agents. I think it's the people. Like there's like when you do these things and you talk about them and you share what you're working on and you share your ideas, other people, like-minded people, there's like a tribe that kind of forms of people that are also pursuing similar ideas and different ideas, right? Like you're in a different space than me, but because we meet every once in a while and we share ideas, both of us get very quickly bootstrapped to a higher level. It's the same thing, right? So it's not just it's not just the AI agents that are pulling me to a higher level, but there's the community, there's the people we have in LA that are all specialized in different stuff that allows us as a group, the collective intelligence is growing very rapidly. So this is not single player. I think about this as a fundamentally multiplayer game. And my identity is rooted in this multiplayer experience. Like I define myself more by the groups of people that I participate in society with, the communities that we build, the like events that we go to, and the way that we collectively kind of uncover the future. It's not single player. I think there are parts that feel single player, but even then, like you're bouncing an idea off of your friend. You're like, hey, am I insane or is this a pretty good application of the tech? And then they're like, no, that's a good idea. You should turn those cards over. And then that like reinforcement from your own friends helps you pursue the thing because we're going into a very unknown, right? So
Yeah.
we kind of need to like map it as a group because the information, this is singularity, in my opinion. I think we're already in singularity. Like the way
In
I
it?
define, yeah, yeah, we have been for maybe like 2 or 3 years now. It's like where the rate of advancement eclipses our human ability to keep up with as an individual. And so you need both AIs and friends to help you keep up with the rate of technology improving.
I can't tell you how happy I am to hear this. Here I was thinking, like, I was thinking you were going to say it's all agents, but you just reminded me and the audience listening that it's not just about the agents, it's also about the community that you are
Yeah,
collectively growing with.
yeah. And not everyone needs to be plugged in. I mean, it's ridiculous expectation to be like my grandpa like likes to keep up with the stuff for fun, but he's 83, so a little like he's not going to sit down and start programming. But he asks me questions almost every week about different stuff he's seeing, and I think that's like it's like not everyone needs to be obsessed with the frontier. Actually, if you think about a group chat, it's nice that we're all different. Some of us are interested in different stuff. Someone's obsessed with the frontier and other people aren't. But then that person comes back and like drops some alpha in the group chat. Now everyone in the group chat is like a little bit better equipped for this world where, very soon like the internet will be filled with, like you said, like it will be filled with a lot of synthetic, fake, like realistic looking stuff that's not real. And then we're gonna have to return and retreat to the community to help ours, like form communities that have a shared sense of values around how to use the technology and subscribe to networks that play by the values we want the world to kind of operate in. Because there will be networks that don't have those values and they will be chaotic. There will be a lot of misinformation, and that's going to be so dealing with that alone is ridiculous. But dealing with it as a group feels more tractable. And also I just think it's like very human in loop. Like, yes, you have 100 agents maybe working for you, but
Hmm.
they're only doing things that you and your friends kind of care about that you pay for because you're paying for them to work, right? So like they are not just going to do things. They don't have desires of their own, right? So we apply the technology in the ways that we care about. And I think that's where like community values kind of matters. Like you can help solve a problem for a bunch of people. They may not have that technical skill, but then now you have that, like you can do that for them, right? You can apply the AI to solve a problem for a group of people that means something to you. That's awesome. I think that we're the very beginning of that. That's like this, I think of it as like there's individual agency, but then there's this like collective agency, like that we as a group now can go beyond our sense of self. And we have like higher group collective intelligence is growing. And then we do that by like specialization of like what we focus on, right?
100%. My mom, I just built her an app to help her learn Italian better, and I can't program. And she's been using it.
This is what I'm talking about.
She's been wanting to learn Italian her whole life. She's tried classes in person, but the teachers are always too fast, or they give her too much paperwork, and she doesn't have that kind of time to treat it like a deep school. She just wants to
Mm-hmm.
practice really just like her restaurant talk. When she
Yeah.
visits Italy, she just wants to
Yep.
be sound good enough to like communicate with the basics. So I built her an app based off of that premise,
What
and
what did
she
you build
chats with
this
it.
in? What did you build it in?
So how I've been making apps is I've been building these long set of prompts that you trigger as text replacements
Yeah.
in Apple.
Okay.
And then so she puts one prompt into ChatGPT and does something, and then she has another one because there's a limit to how many characters you can fit in a text replacement. So I basically built her like little shortcuts for her prompts. It builds it
Yeah.
out.
Presets, like preset prompts. Yeah.
Yes. Boom. I gave her presets. Then her version of ChatGPT in voice mode completely caters to the kind of application she needs. And
That's
it
awesome.
makes it a version, it's like a version of ChatGPT. It's just for her.
Yeah. Yes. This is powerful. And I think it's I think it's the piece that's missing from language learning is like having someone that you can bounce this off of in a very immersive way. I like to just take the voice mode and then walk around. I'll be like, advanced voice mode. I'll be like, "Hey, chat, we're gonna go for a walk, and every time I point my phone at something, you're gonna say the word in Chinese, and you're gonna say the word in English. You're gonna use it in a sentence, and then we're just gonna have a little mini lesson. So every time I point at something, we get a natural kind of exposure to the culture that's more immersive. And it's like now you're going out into the world, right? This is what you clued me into is like ambient intelligence when you're actually in the real world is a piece not everything is sitting at a computer actually. Like the intelligence is with us, it's in our pocket, it's multimodal, it can see, it can listen, right?
Do you ever go to like a group camp, like where like there's like someone teaching how to do like beads, another one's teaching how to do like archery, and there's another person teaching how to do like blacksmith work? These are all like multimodal agents, in my opinion, that exist spatially. So
Yes.
the
Yeah,
kids that are going
if you think
along the
about
camp,
humans are multimodal agents, yes. Yeah, yeah.
sorry,
I mean, we set a very high bar for multimodal agency. I think that like that's
yes.
what we are, right? Like we can move in the real world and use our hands and see and smell, and the text chatbots can't do all those things yet, and that gives us a huge advantage.
Do you have any insight or perspective on robotics? Do you think we're going to be talking and working with physical mixture of humanoids, robotic arms through voice soon? Or I know we're in the singularity. So, like,
Mm,
where in the singularity roughly do you see robotics being as relevant into our daily lives?
yeah. So a lot of my friends work on this tech. I'd say like if it's a lot of my friends in college were working on the robots they were working on were self-driving cars, and they worked on it back then, like 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and I remember they went in very excited, and then 2 years in, they were like, "I think it's time for me to find the next thing." I'm like, "What? Why?" Like, and then they're like, "This tech is 10 years out. Now we have like and now Waymos are here. Like the car drive, like I take a Waymo literally everywhere. I've taken 106 Waymos now, so
Whoa.
I'm bought in 100%. But then and I talk to my friends that work on robotics. One of my buddies is at Stanford. He's a PhD student. He's working on robotics. And then I have other friends that work on like Figure, like the humanoid
Oh,
robots.
for real. I love
Yeah,
figures
yeah.
demonstrations.
Yeah, I have friends that are like working on these, and I talk to them, and so I get the perspectives like, okay, so where are we with like humanoid robots? Where are we with robot arms? So my friends working on humanoid robots, they're pretty excited, but also like, and then I have a friend at Stanford, and he's kind of like, he said something like, oh, I think it's like 10 years out, and I was like, oh my god, this reminds me of self-driving cars, and then I'm like, why? And then it's like, when we're using, and he's like less interested in the humanoids, more interested in the robot arms and like the different things. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, and kind of like how I'm talking about coding co-pilots with guardrails and like ask me for approval before you
Mm,
do this so that I can hit the brakes just in case this is a braking change.
yes.
He's like, I sit here and when we're operating these robots, my hand is always just hovering the kill switch. And then
Wow.
yeah. And so I'm like, okay, this is a good insight, right? Like, even if the capability of the robot is there, if the risk is high, you're not going to see it deployed in the home, right? The home where the room for error is, it has to be. If this thing, like, I just want a robot that can, like, I have a robot litter box, but I want a robot that can take the litter bag out of the box and then toss it and then come back. It's like, that's the level of like, I want the humanoid to be able to like take the bag, toss it, put a new bag in. That's very,
Yes.
that's a very high bar, I think, for a robot at home. Right now, everything else, the litter box flushes itself, which is kind of cool. But
Nice.
I think about that and I'm like, what's the worst case scenario? I don't want it to accidentally hurt my cats.
Right. Oh my
And
God. No,
same thing, like, are you going to trust a robot with your baby? Like
not
that,
currently.
not anytime soon. And it may learn how to do this all in simulation, but then when it shows up in the real world, and then it's like, what are the real risks? And it's like the hinges, like you got to be very like all of this stuff is the capabilities will probably get there, but the reliability needs to like. way more reliability. They're very transparent about their metrics, and they post it on their website. Here's how many times the airbag was deployed. Here's how many times the car got in an accident.
Wow.
That is how you if you're transparent, if you're building an AI system or a robotic system and you want people to use it, you have to be transparent with people on how well it works. Otherwise, it's never going to be used for anything important, anything serious. And I think like home robotics is a very serious thing. And if it's not properly, if it's not perfect, then it needs to be sandboxed. And if it's not sandboxed and if it's not like reliable, it's not going to be doing anything very important that we want that like is human facing. Like we may be outside of the room that it is in, right? Like we may be handling the kill switch. So I think there's like it's exciting. It's gonna. I don't. I'm like it's exciting, right? I like.
Yeah.
But I think we have a long way to go on it showing up in our world.
So in 2007, I took a robotics class at MIDI High School before I went to MIDI. I did it in 8th grade, the summer camp.
Yeah.
Our professor accidentally got hit in the face by a robotic arm that he was building because someone used the same radio wave signal on their controller on their robot when they were like doing their little RC car in the other room. It was on the same frequency.
No way.
As it was on the same like radio channel. And so all of a sudden, like he was working, all of a sudden I saw it. The arm just comes up and just swings and hits a metal bar across his face. And it was like, and it felt for a split second because we didn't see where this was happening. It felt like it came alive. This was 2007. This is before the iPhone.
Yeah.
And I'm just like,
this is like way early. And like exactly what we like, this is exactly what is going to happen. Like in the worst case scenario will play out in some lab. People are going to get hurt. And then we're gonna get more serious about this. But that's the actual risk. Like that's what my friend at Stanford is like, he's concerned about, right? Like even just working with an arm.
Switch.
Yeah, hand by this kill switch. But that doesn't solve like that. That's not enough. I think.
No.
And then I don't know. You've seen iRobot. Did you read the other? Like you read the short stories that Asimov wrote?
Read 2 of them, but not all of them.
But he has like the rules that robots need to abide by.
Yeah, I think they're not enough. But
it's fascinating that like he wrote those, and I was like, that's funny. Like this isn't how computers work. You can't just write down a bunch of rules. And like back in the day when I was reading it, I was like, you don't just write a bunch of rules and be like, stick to these rules and then like figure out how to reason across these natural language instructions. And then now I look at reasoning engines, I look at chatbots, and I'm just like, oh shit. Like, and then you combine that with like robots and trying to do visual reasoning, and then for them to be able to look at a room and be like, don't hurt the cat. Like simple objective. Don't hurt the cat. Don't do anything that might hurt the cat or the baby. Or like all these like don't break the glass table. Like there's all this like, and I think about this complex, the physical world is a way harder, like in cyberspace, I'm like, you just have this little folder of files and it's backed up. So like, I'm okay with you bricking this because I can just like, I can deal with that. This is like a virtual space. It's a sandbox. And I know what the ultimate downside is. But in the real world, the ultimate downside is actually like way worse. And so the bar has to be much higher.
Yes.
And I mean, the fact that we have cars that can drive on the road better than human beings it's proof that like we can get to that place. But it wasn't without like error.
Yeah.
So we're going to see that, I think, with robotics. And it's going to be a 10-year game at least, 10 years at least.
Did you watch that research video paper that Apple produced on their robotic arm research they're doing?
No, I saw the more recent thing where they were talking about how reasoning engines don't reason, which is funny.
I know. I thought that was interesting too. I think it was just because they're a little sour right now.
Yeah.
After WWDC with some of the AI stuff.
But,
But their video that they released on the robotic arm, they have a Pixar-looking lamp that is mounted to a table, and it can see, it can hear, and it can gesture very naturally. And they gave an example. It shows the human operator being like, hey, where'd I put my keys? The lamp tilts up and looks at the human's face, looks to where the keys were, looks back at the human, looks back to the keys, and like gestures like that. And so, light bulbs go off in my head. Then they showed another example, same robot. They said, I'm thirsty. The robot nudges the water cup that was sitting on the table. It nudges it in the direction of the person. So it does like a little nudge, nudge, and then the lamp looks at the face, and then nudge, nudge, looks at the face to kind of reassure the human the intention of, you want me to take this cup. And it made me think, and the last one was music. it heard music playing in the house, and it starts bouncing its head correctly to the beat. And because it has a few actuators, it almost looks like it has a shoulder, so it can
Yeah.
actually do like good, like bouncy rhythm.
Like vibe. It's vibing.
It's literally like your lamp is vibing. And it made me think we're going to get to this point where like someone might be like, my best friend is my lamp. It gets me
Yeah.
better than
Yeah.
anybody.
Yeah.
What are your
There's a
thoughts on
cool-
that? Yeah.
Oh my God. There's a movie. It's kind of, I mean, it's with the humanoid robot. It's called Chappie.
I
Is the
love
movie called
Chappie.
The movie's called
Yes.
Chappie, right?
Yeah.
You've seen it. Yeah. A huge part of Chappie's personality is that he learns how to walk from a bunch of gangsters. And he's got this like limp, and it gives him so much personality. Is it necessary? Probably not. But like, and then he speaks a certain way. And I think this is all character design. And I think a lot of what we're doing is character design. I think the chatbot side, there's like some persona stuff there that's very, very fascinating. You can create these personas and then you can put them behind programs and have them act a certain way. But now you have like character design on the physical level of like the way this like machine moves in our world. Some of that stuff is a subjective choice, right? Like, does the machine need to dance?
Yes.
No. But like, It would be fucking. I mean, it would be swaggy. It would be like, what if we learned some new moves from this thing that's just like learning how to dance in simulation, right? Like, there's so much. I think that, like, yes, it's a fascinating thing. And Chappie is the first time I was like, oh man,
wow.
Like personality is like not just what it says and how it says it, but also like how it kind of carries itself, right?
Movement, its weight,
Yeah.
where it puts
It literally,
its emphasis.
a huge part of it was like they gave this robot swag by just hanging out with it and teaching it a different way of moving about our world. Like, yeah, I think that's
my
awesome.
God. I was at MIT MTech.
I want my robots to have personality like that for sure.
They should. Honestly, they should have that. And I think they will. And I think we might be like, future kids might be like, wow, grandma and grandpa, what was it like when everything in your house wasn't alive?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, well, my desk, like I had to lift it up myself, and doors, like, I did it myself. And then they'll be like, grandma, why?
Yeah. The expectation of like hardware in that future, I think about this a lot. Like, and actually, I was having O3 Pro help me think about Sci-Fi. Like,
ooh.
I was like, let's take all of these capabilities we have now without going too far out. Like, extrapolate out. Let's say the reliability increases now, right? And then I was like, let's say we're not multiplanetary. We're like at a point where it's like Earth, Mars, and then like people working on the asteroid belt, and then maybe we're working on one mega like Dyson Sphere project. But then I basically asked for like Game of Thrones in space, but I didn't say Game of Thrones. I basically described all of the constraints. And then I was like, also make sure the technology is grounded in an extension of where we are today, right? Like projecting out these capabilities of language models and vision analysis, multimodal, and like the idea that people can speak and make things happen in the world. And O3 Pro, man, it wrote the like high level concept of the story. And I was like, holy, this I can't wait to make this animate this. And then I was like, now direct just one scene that establishes this technology for the viewer, right? Like, there's always like some scene that's like, oh, we got to explain how the rules of this tech work, just so that when we use it later on, they have an expectation that's aligned with where we are in the movie.
Yes.
That's grounded and inspired by stuff that they've seen in their world, right?
God, you're a filmmaker now.
Well, aspiring through AI, right? Like,
I feel like you're in.
Well, I'm trying to understand the piece. It's like if you can generate anything, then like the story you tell actually matters, right? Like, and then why does someone gravitate towards a particular story? And I love sci-fi, and part of it, it's like, how do we get the right? What is the next sci-fi? If like now we got robots that can walk, we got robots that can talk. Well, what's next? There is something next, and we have to imagine it. And I use language models that can think to help imagine it.
I want to read your sci-fi so bad. I would love to read your sci-fi.
Maybe I'll put it out there because like it writes these scenes, and I'm just like, yeah, it's a little too magical. Like let's go a little bit more analog. And then it like rewrites the scene, and I'm kind of just like, this is good. Like I think that the smart like people are like, it's not a good writer. I'm like, yeah. I mean, it's still human in loop, right? I'm articulating and fine tuning the response through my curation. But God, like
when you publish this on Substack, I would like to read it.
All right, maybe I will. Like maybe
I would love to read it. Make some artwork for it too.
That's what I want. I want to bridge it to so I told you about like the evolutionary programs. That's cool. There's a second thing that I want to do as well, which is like part of the tools I want to give these systems as they evolve is like the video generators, right? So VO3 on API, Runway ML on API, Image Model Flux on API, right? So you give them the ability to create other things other than text, and then you create the system, and then it's like I like this, I like this, I like, and I like start grading the system. This is what I'm
Yes.
looking for, and then it evolves closer towards my vision, and it taps into my 100,000 experts that I have. Like I have
Wow.
experts across every single topic, and then it's like
Yes.
bootstrap me because I don't have the vocabulary of cinematography, but I got GPTs
Hmm.
that do,
Hmm.
and they may be better at writing the prompt for the shot that I want.
Hmm.
So now I'm trying to create this like team of agents that are individually better than me at the sub pieces, but me having the vision of like we want to tell a story that's like maybe 100 years out, and this is like my assumption of the trends that will play out, and the reasoning model can project that out and write the story. It's amazing, and I think that we're early. The tech is a little expensive. That's why the realizations aren't hitting a lot of people yet, but
Sure.
eventually once everyone has access to like the generators and it's not $200 subscription a month, it's going to click for more people that like your creative. I think it's an amplification of writing. I don't think it's a replacement of writing. I think it's like now you have the writer is paired with like a scaffolding that they can kind of really expand off of, and the writer becomes a world builder, like a
Yes.
multimodal world builder, right?
My
Like
God, yes.
you're not just writing how the guy looks, you're looking at options and you're like, it's actually like more like this in my mind. And now I see it. It's like real-time imagination. And the system will eventually be faster, bi-directional, real-time. It'll consult you for
God,
feedback.
yes.
Yeah,
Parth, do you remember we were at a dinner and you and I got to hang out with one of our favorite sci-fi authors in person, had a dinner with Neil Stevenson. Can you
that's
just
right.
tell me a little bit about what that experience was like for you and what it meant to you and the questions you asked him?
Oh my God. This was like a dream come true. I mean, meeting Neil Stevenson, Snow Crash, like so many books, crypto, oh my God, Cryptonome
Yeah,
Con.
Cryptonomicon, you got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Just basically, like you, and he's a sci-fi writer, but then actually like so influential that I would say it inspired that entire like him and a couple other people inspired like that era of cyberpunk and like Neuromancer. These ideas of like what does cyberspace look like? What does it mean if we can talk to programs? What does it mean if you can render like virtual reality and AR? Kind of came out of the science fiction that they were writing, and they and I talk we're getting to talk to the guy that spawns an entire genre of science fiction, and then asking him like the couple moments were like one, it's like what, how do you feel about the fact that we have self-driving cars, we have Vision Pro, we have all these, we have a lot of the stuff that you guys were talking about back then as like a imagine what if. And this is the kind of stuff that you see in Blade Runner, right? Back then it's like in the
Yes.
movie only, it's only in the movie, and then now it's in reality. Like Minority Report was kind of a cautionary tale, and now it's like we kind of
Hmm.
have Minority Report technology
Yeah,
now.
predictive tech and for crimes and
iRobot, same thing with iRobot. Same, like it was like you think that it was like, oh, one day maybe, but now I look around, it's like I feel like we're facing these exact same technologies in the real world. And Neil Stevenson, yeah, he was he coded for fun just to kind of get like exposure, but then he's primarily a writer. But then so seeing where the tech was at the time, he was saying the tech wasn't good enough to, it was just an idea, but the tech wasn't there yet. But now the tech is there, and so we need new ideas. And that's very surreal. And also, I was like, so what's next? And he's like, you got to find other sci-fi writers. Like, I don't have the answer. And that's now one of my pursuits is like, who is telling me, who is painting a picture of tomorrow is very interesting to me, because I think we have a lot of like Hollywood influence, like life imitates art. A lot of my career has been influenced by the content I've consumed. I would say Tron is a huge influence on my career. Both the original Tron, my dad watched it in college. He made sure me and my brother watched. Like, he watched it in engineering college, and he was like, "We were so mind blown of like this is what might the inside of a computer look like." Even though they worked on computers and it doesn't look like that, but it's imagination, right? Like the idea
yeah,
that you can talk to programs, and that's early. Like that was pre-language models. Then Tron
80.
Legacy comes out. Yeah, Tron Legacy comes out, and it's still got the same guy, Jeff Bridges from 1980, 82, right? But
Hmm.
like they take him and then they deep fake him to the young version, so they make him play himself at a young age, as well as the old current day Jeff Bridges. And then I met Ed Albright at one of our events, and he works at Metaphysic, and I was telling him about how Tron got me into this like avatar kind of mindset of like, oh, talking to programs, but also like deep fake technology. I saw that first in Tron. He's like, I worked on Tron Legacy. And so it's like full circle, right? You meet the people that write the books, then you meet them in the real world and you ask them questions. You meet the people that made the movies, and then you meet them in the real world. Like, dude, did you ever imagine that this tech would end up off the shelf, that I could just play myself in a movie that I make without asking anyone else for permission? This is incredible. And he's just like, I mean, even no, they could not predict it, but they were
They
early.
kind
But they
of,
were
yeah,
they're
they kind of
pioneers,
did.
They're
Pioneered. Okay.
pioneered, right? Like they do it before everyone else thinks it's possible, and then
Right.
that content that they create, the book that they write, the movies that come out, the TV shows that spin out, all of that gives us technologists more of an imagination. And then I think it's kind of like life imitates art. And for better or for worse, we also need some kind of, I think we need some, it's kind of part of why a lot of the discourse is dystopian, is because Hollywood tells the story of like robots, right, taking over all the time. But that's partly because like no one wants to, like, they think it's like, does anyone want to watch the positive? Like the story of the what if it works out is not as exciting as the what if it just totally falls apart. But I
Right.
think it's possible to tell the story of what if the technology works out and then make it a human story about like humans still have flaws, right? So you can
Yeah.
even paint a picture of the positive. Let's say we do solve some of these important problems and then tell a human story. So I think that, yeah, I think it's not purely about technology. I think it's actually
Yes.
about humans. It's about how humans use technology. And I think I am trying to imagine science fiction given where we are today, because we totally need new science fiction.
I feel like what you're building, your life, I mean, if you feed this into a neural network, you can almost have it imagine a sci-fi based off of your outlines that would
Mhm.
be a viable story that is meaningful and impactful to a whole nother generation of humans and new fledgling AI systems that are developing that will also
Yeah.
learn from your sci-fi
Yeah.
and add that to their knowledge graph.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I've never been so intentional about putting more content out as I am now, but mostly because like actually AI is learning from us as we think and we publish. And so when you say like explore my work, you're also, it's like explore like part of where my mind is going and help me unpack this future. It's fascinating. I mean, if you write, a lot of what you're writing is actually also is like part of your writing for AI too, right? Like how does AI perceive Don Allen? When I go to ChatGPT and I ask it about Don Allen, like what does it know about you? How does it think about who you are and your aspirations and what you're interested in? And that stuff is all, I mean, it ends up being an ambient thing, like how the models perceive us and what we hope to be and what our values are end up being infused in the ambient intelligence that we're going to be interacting with. And so you kind of have to have some vision, right? Like, yeah.
I was going to ask kind of um, another kind of, getting towards the end here, I was going to ask around when it comes to rethinking reality, how do you find yourself rethinking reality?
Usually I do it through the lens of technology. That's my predisposition, is like, given we have systems that can do X, then what is, like, why? What is possible? Like given I can do this, so what does that mean? This is now possible. What does that mean for me? What does that mean for my friends? What does that mean for my coworkers, or like everyone that works in my role in my industry? And so I kind of start with the self, and then I go out of take slightly larger circles out of like myself, and I think, well, what does it mean for music? What does it mean for music production? What does it mean that we have programs that can understand any language? What does it mean for language itself, right? Like, will we end up with the Babel fish from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? It's a
Oh my
technology.
God. Yes. I forgot
There's a
about that.
they have a technology they put in their ear, and then it is a alien that basically translates all languages instantly through. So then, is that what AirPods become, right? And what does that mean if everyone can just, whatever language you speak now is no longer a barrier? Yeah, it helps to know English because more people on the planet know English, and that's how business is done. But if you could do business with people outside of your language, because language wasn't a barrier, now you have more people you can possibly connect with. I think AI unlocks that. So I think about that, right? It's like, okay, if you can translate yourself into every language, now
Yes.
you're connecting with people all over the world that you would have previously never been able to connect with. And even if it's a parasocial relationship, they follow you, but now they understand parts of you. And then
Right.
there is like downstream effects. Like 10 years later, maybe they're pursuing a topic, maybe you meet them and then like you team up on something, even though you don't have a common tongue. That's a great milestone for us to achieve, right? Like bridging bridging human beings. Yes, we're connected through the internet, but also bridging us through language. That's powerful. And then bridging like this is like this kind of glue of like the models learned from us. Now they're going to go beyond in different ways. And then that is like these it's like you are no longer limited by the problems you have solved or faced in your life. You're now limited by ask the questions that you ask of these systems. Like, that's one of those realizations that I had. Like, your limits are no longer what they were 2 years ago. And unless you sit down and really think about that and maybe talk to a language model about this, like, here's who I think I am and what my limits are and what my scope in life is. But then you think about, what can I be? Like, what can I, where can we go next? Like that. I think it's like a form of manifestation through AI. It's like, imagine this hypothetical version of me 5 years from now, given I apply myself in this way, try to be more creative, try to be hopefully healthier, less obsessive over work. But that's fine. Like, given my traits, given my strengths and weaknesses, how can we kind of like create a roadmap towards being this next version of me? And AI will give you that. Like, it will hallucinate whatever. You can say it's not thinking. You could say it's not really thinking. I'm like, okay, but I am thinking, and I am getting options, and I am choosing from those options how to operate. I am the one with increased agency. It's not telling me what to do. It's just presenting. It's like simulating possible universes and then giving you a map towards possibly achieving some of that. And the path will change, and then your goals will change too. But you're not lost. You can choose to tap into collective intelligence through these models and then go somewhere that even you weren't going to do. Like 2 years ago, you probably thought your life was just going to be this, but now your life, you can reimagine your life and just be different. You can be more. You can be, and I think this is something that I try to do often. Partly because the models do so much work that I'm like, I have to go for a walk and think about it anyways. I'm just like, whoa,
Right.
I'm not going to do that by hand again. Like, I was late on my expense reporting, and then I went to Claude Code. I was like, just go into my email, find all the receipts, categorize all of them, put them into a folder by month. And then it wrote a bunch of data analysis, data engineering scripts, and then it did it all in 30 minutes. And I was just like, well, I'm never doing expense reporting myself again. This is clearly how I plan to do it forever. And I'm like, man, we are 1 year away from never having to file our own taxes if we don't want to.
Right.
Like, just tell the AI to do your taxes. And I'm like, I can't wait for that to be the other people to have that, not just me.
AI did my taxes this year.
Did it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is
I
the right application.
had the data organized into a giant spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
then
my
I trained a
personal
little
finance,
thing.
my investments, same thing. I'm just like, yo, AI to help me. It's like,
Yeah.
you just take the smartest model and you're like, clearly, I mean, I don't have enough of energy and like mental bandwidth to maybe think about these things, but there's no reason why you can't just throw a couple reasoning queries at it and like get that extra juice, make a slightly better decision today. And then it might just like buy you more time, pay off later. And that's crazy. Like so that the application of AI to yourself is actually really important to me. It's not just like do it for your job. That's a ridiculous, like, you cannot define yourself only by what you do for work. Like, your job might not exist, that company might fail, but if you apply the technology to yourself, your own growth, like, that's, no one can take that from you, right? Like, you can get the job of the future, right? Applying it to yourself. Apply, like, I want to learn this, I want to become better at this, I want to, and that personal growth, like, that's just the greatest investment that you can make, is into yourself. And then once you get comfortable with that, then you start investing in the people around you, and then your whole team, your whole squad is just like amplified. Exactly.
All the automations I've been setting up in this last year is right before my daughter comes here.
There you go.
I've been trying to set up all these automations so that I actually can be offline safely and still have work and business kind of taken care of.
Congratulations. I mean, a little early, but I'm like, I mean, your kid is going to grow up with a ton of ambient intelligence and a dad that's like incredibly curious about like making sure that like this is set up well for them. That's, like, we're Bay Area kids, so like we're lucky we grew up with like so much positive mindset around tech and what it does for people, like what it's done for my family in my lifetime. It's changed our whole like lineage. Like, parents went from like villages to working on semiconductors and like sequencing the genome, and now we get to work on intelligence. And like, imagine what we get to do for our kids through this. They're going to grow up with this. They will take it for granted that they have super intelligence. That's incredible, right? Like, I'm 30, you're in your 30s. Like, this is for us. It's like we're slow. Like, we are rewiring ourselves. They won't have to rewire themselves.
It's just native.
They'll be native. Yes.
Yeah. Oh my god, dude, you're blowing my mind with that perspective. Again, I get chills because of my nerve damage. I get chills in my left back part of my brain when a new idea or a new pathway happens, and I feel it as like a shock. You just gave me one of those, hearing you say that.
Clip it.
We'll do.
Yeah. But this is it's exciting and it's uncharted, but it's like we get to be pioneers for sure.
Where could people find your work? Where would you like people to know about what you do? Or do you want to be secret and not share anything?
You can go to my website, parth.club. I'm trying to make it a better place for finding more about me. It has links to all my social. Also, most channels, I'm Parth Intelligence, like at Parth Intelligence. Well, I have that handle most places. So, but yeah, and if there's like something that you wanna learn, or you're trying to unpack similar ideas, like feel free to like drop it in the comments of a video or something. Like I try to engage with people and try to like build this like collective knowledge. And even if I can't hop on a call necessarily with everyone, I do like to share ideas like fairly frequently with like I don't care like if you're new to this or not. I do like bouncing ideas. I think collective intelligence is huge for me. So I just appreciate everyone who's kind of gotten this far and like listened to this like philosophical ramble slash tech world, like whatever. Just happy to be here.
Thank you so much for joining. And God, I really appreciate you. And I'll go ahead and end this. I'll end it now.